Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone who is watching us right now, on behalf of the Institute for Politics and Society, I would like to welcome you to our interview series that is conducted with a real special guest today. It's my pleasure to welcome here Mr. Tsuneo Watanabe, Senior Research Fellow at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation and a non-resident fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. His expertise are Asia and Japan in particular, but he also deals extensively with the United States and security. My name is Filip Lukesh and I'm delighted to host today's interview where we will be diving into complex security issues that are pressing the current international relations and international system nowadays. And we also dive into security landscape and some complex issues in respect to the upcoming events in the United States. The world seems to be getting more complex and more difficult when it comes to the global and security architecture. And also the security is evolving rapidly, so which presents complex and often difficult decisions for our policymakers and perplexed ones for analysts worldwide. So with the upcoming presidential elections, the stakes for global security are high. And the outcome of this election will have far-reaching implications, shaping the trajectory of international relations and security dynamics on a global scale. So, Mr. Watanabe, I would like to ask you, what will happen if Trump is re-elected, and what will happen if Biden is?
Oh yes, that's the million-dollar question. Everybody in the world is trying to find which would win and what is the effect. First of all, I think let me say my judgment is it's the probability of the Trump or Biden will win is 50-50. That means we don't know who would win. And if easier to say that if the Mr. Trump is re-elected, and that's the one thing probably when he was in tenure of a president, he was much interested in domestic issue, so very much inward looking, and also he was very much interested in reducing a trade deficit. Because that's understandable. His experience in his life is mostly the CEO of the company. Yeah, reducing a deficit is really critical for him to survive in his business. For US government, it's not, unfortunately. However, he never understands. So I think already he said, for example, that he's going to put 60% of the tariff over the imports from China. But I think also he's really considering put tariff on EU or Japan or such kind of the allied partner too. So I think that's probably the one thing we can think of. And also he said he's gonna be the person who's gonna stop or see the battle in the Ukraine.
Yeah, that's getting really famous. Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
You know, the how is a big question because Mr. Trump is really interested in a deal with his counterpart. So he's considering a deal with Ukraine leader Mr. Zelensky and also Russian leader Putin. I think his direction is either. For example, current moment, Mr. Trump is somehow the frustrated, expressed frustration of too much support to Ukraine. And somehow we should take a look at within the US. US has a big trouble in the border with Mexico. But you know, at the same time, potentially Mr. Trump may support stronger support to Ukraine with more assertive weapons, which Biden administration has been reluctant to send. Either direction is good as long as Mr. Trump gets the result. So, you know, that's one word we can think of. unpredictability. What Mr. Trump will do is very much unpredictable. Depends on the case and depends on the timing, depends on the counterpart of his deal. So we should be ready for either direction. The Trump is very much inward and very much reluctant to support Ukraine, or rather he may turn more strong support to the Ukraine and try to finish the current battle in the Ukraine. His goal is clear, showing his ability to the United States and the world. And he has a lot of litigation. I think he's prosecuted 4 major the cases. And also he has a lot of civil suits and he needs money. So he really wanted to show his ability for diplomacy as a leader of the United States, and he's going to argue why the U.S. court system is judging to such kind of American hero or for the major burden, financial burden sanction. I think that's it. That's relatively simply to understand what his motivation. If Biden is re-elected again, that's probably the continuation of a current policy. What is his policy? I think maintain the current world order and maintain supremacy of U.S. military and economy in the world. But at the same time, unfortunately, compared to the past U.S. leaders, I think the influence and wealth and military power still number 1 in the world, but relatively declined. So I think President Biden will be struggling to maintain his own influence over, especially the very true in the Gaza in Palestine. I think now they are really trying to push pressure on Israel Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, to cease fire and stop fight, and also room for the more humanitarian assistance. But many people realize, Biden's influence over Israel is the very, very less than what the past U.S. president. I think that is a really difficult thing. But I'm from Japan, so as for the security in Indo-Pacific, I think both Biden and Trump would continue to somehow the involvement of security in the Indo-Pacific, because they realize that China is the most formidable the potential rival for the United States in the long run. I think that's good news for the Indo-Pacific area. But at the same time, Biden is more connecting to the security in Europe and security in the Indo-Pacific. As for the Trump, we never know how Trump would think about it. Trump may think probably the more stress on the Indo-Pacific rather than Europe. Or, again, we don't know. Trump may turn to the stress on finishing war in the Ukraine first and concentrating the power over against China. That's unpredictable.
You've touched on some topics that I want to cover with you later. It's the Indo-Pacific. And I definitely agree with you that there is a broad agreement within the community that when it comes to Trump, that one word that describes his potential second term is unpredictability.
Right.
And this is something that fears a lot of people.
Right.
On the other hand, for example, when we look at the potential responses and reactions of Russia and China, I've noticed that there are some opinions that they perceive the re-election of Trump both as a threat, a risk, but also as an opportunity. So in which way do you think China might see Trump back in the office as an opportunity, and in which way as a threat?
Yeah, I think that's very much a good question, because I'm sure the Chinese leader Xi Jinping and his aide are wondering which is better, Trump or Biden.
I agree. Yeah.
Before Biden won, I think they believe Biden is much better than Trump, because one of the Chinese experts on the United States told me that the Biden didn't think of anything about regime change of Chinese Communist Party rule. Trump may think of the regime change, but what the Biden administration really did is starting very much a kind of a containment type of competition against China in both in the military sense and economic sense. Especially the Biden administration is taking a very strong export control, so-called de-risking China's economy. So I think I'm sure China is not happy with Biden. And Trump, they're happy with? No, Trump is a person who started heavier tariff over the Chinese export. And also, the Trump is very unpredictable which direction he's going to do. So for Chinese leader, really don't know which one is better. One possibility is that if chemistry between Trump and Xi Jinping was still good, their chemistry was really good when Trump met Xi Jinping. If chemistry is good, some opportunity for China to change the U.S. course drastically. Trump may jump in some deal with Xi Jinping about if he's gaining somehow, he means that if Xi is gaining some the good things that he wants to have it. I think what is this? Maybe status of Taiwan. That's a worry of many people.
That's a hot spot of the whole Indo-Pacific and like a hot issue that needs to be covered. And we can stick to Taiwan as the next part. So how much do you think that Taiwan relies on the future and on the outcome of the presidential election when it comes to its future course?
Okay, that's a little bit complicated. The reason is one thing, the Biden administration's stance is clear. They really try to respect the status quo of Taiwan and China. That means that they don't want any big change. Like, first of all, Biden administration is sending a message to the no independent declaration by Taiwan. That's going to be the big, bad potential trigger for the Chinese assertive action. That's one thing's clear. But also, they are against the status quo, means, of course, they will not want to the China's unilateral action to the unified Taiwan either. So, status quo oriented. Trump, we never know.
So here we are again.
We really don't understand, don't know the Mr. Trump is understanding the current very the subtle situation between China and Taiwan and the United States, and probably the Mr. Trump don't know the history of why such a subtle situation is has been shaped in the history. So. And Mr. Trump tends to believe he's a genius, and his genius is sometimes very good that he completely ignored the cases before what happened to. He's proud of his being amateur in international politics, but because of his amateurness, the many Americans really liked his way. So. I don't think he's respectful to any foreign policy advisor to the Mr. President, be careful. It's very dangerous to the changing the status quo, including, for example, U.S. is stepping too much defense of Taiwan. You know, that's really, really the subtle game, but Mr. Trump may not understand. That's risky.
Okay, so we covered the topic of the Indo-Pacific and the possible future, and I also mentioned about the possible response of Russia. So let's get to Europe right now. We can see that Biden is quite solid about the transatlantic partnerships between the United States and European Union.
Right.
And there has been this strong statement of Mr. Trump when he proclaimed that he would pull back of NATO if the European countries didn't pay up.
Right.
And this is a really strong statement. So do you think that his re-election would really be such an endangerment and what it could lead to in the trajectory of the future of Ukraine?
Right. You know what, as for Mr. Trump, he's very unpredictable. He can go either side, pro-NATO or anti-NATO. And he's going to either way, pro-Russia or anti-Russia. So, because that's not his goal. His goal is gaining his own interest. So if any direction is good for his own self-interest.
What is his self-interest in this?
I already told you that he really need to survive the lot of litigation in domestically, including prosecution and civil defense, civil litigation. I think you know. It seems that at the end of his tenure in presidency, if he's elected, he really needs to all clear to Mr. President, you're great, and we don't sue anything to your trouble because you are a great president in the United States ever. That's kind of a wild dream of Mr. Trump. That's probably basically his idea. So he would like to appeal to all over the world in the US constituency that he's a great. He can do anything.
Okay. So do I understand it correctly that he wants to basically shape his foreign policy decisions based on how appealing it would be at home?
Right. That's right.
Okay.
For example, the Nobel Peace Prize. The famous story to the Japanese. Former Prime Minister of Shinzo Abe of Japan had a good personal relation with Mr. Trump. And Mr. Trump revealed he asked Mr. Abe to recommend his own Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, Abe didn't answer. Well, no, clearly, I'm sure Mr. Trump really wanted to get some Nobel Peace Prize. Why? Of course, he's famous, but one thing is if getting a Nobel Peace Prize, appealing to the U.S. constituency or U.S. legal society that he is a really great politician and you are not supposed to prosecute such kind of a great person. And also when he was a president, previous presidency, he said he has his own ability to somehow erase neutralize what he has done illegally. I think this time also he's somehow the neutrality of U.S. presidency during his tenure. So he really wanted to clear what he has done. He owe the legal trouble. I think no, that's in the individual interest. It's fair because he really needs to survive too.
His personal objectives are driving his decisions. Okay.
Right. And you know, some people believe Mr. Trump is very inward-looking. Yes, but if some attainment in the international affairs, that's good for attain his own personal interest. He's going to pursue. So that's why I keep saying he's unpredictable. Means that he can go either like the stopping aid to Ukraine or encourage Ukraine to fight against Russia and stop the current battle. Either way is possible. We never know.
So I think that the whole world will be watching the US election because this is gonna can change the trajectory of the whole system when it comes to the security structure. Okay, speaking of Trump, let's get to Biden because, as you mentioned, it's 50-50 right now. So there's also a big chance that Biden is reelected.
Right.
And if that happens, what can we expect in the future when it comes, for example, to the Gaza conflict, the Ukraine, and the possible scenarios in the Indo-Pacific?
Right.
So what can change in the next years of the second term of Biden if he's reelected?
I think the Biden's a big job as a presidency is try to prevent Mr. Trump to become a president again. So I think that's one of the reasons Biden's foreign policy included some inward-looking domestic economic policy, so-called foreign policy for middle class. I think that is clearly targeting the middle class, which can casting vote to the presidential election and appealing to the more, I think, U.S. domestic production and prosperity and the jobs. So it seems to me the clearly not only Trump administration but the Biden administration is pursuing protectionism, industrial policy. I think that's natural because they really need to survive. But at the same time, the Biden administration is staying in the international engagement. That's clearly the maintain the supremacy of the U.S. military power and contribute to the stability in the region, not only the one region but global. Well, mainly they're focusing on transatlantic and Indo-Pacific as well as Middle East. So I think that's very much the course the Biden would do. And if Mr. Trump lost in the election, probably easier for the Biden to pursue more international engagement rather than the domestic focus, the protectionism. But of course. Now, U.S. constituencies really wanted to the U.S.-oriented domestic America First policy. So not so easy to
True.
So we're balancing of such kind of domestic-oriented the constituency, but also engagement all over the world. Because the common sense says that if U.S. is stronger and the international stability is continuous, that's good for the all business, including U.S. business. Now U.S. business is very strong. U.S. economy, very strong.
It's growing, that's true.
But
yes.
trouble is some people are behind in the U.S. Some people in the behind was frustrated with such kind of a global economy. But generally U.S. is the winner in the global economy. So I think it's a really domestic program. I really want U.S. leader to solve these domestic issues as early as possible. But it would take a longer time.
Definitely, and as we know, it's really connected to international policy, the foreign policy, and the domestic policy as well. But when I think of the possible Biden's re-election, do you think we can more basically count on the consistency and remaining the status quo in the international system, or do you think that there will be some steps where the U.S. foreign policy will become more assertive?
It really depends on the characteristic of a president and the administration, as well as international situation too. So.
Okay, and now I more lead to Biden's re-election. If Biden is re-elected.
Biden's case, right? Biden is old.
Fair enough.
First of all, we don't know Biden really continue to serve as a president for 4 years.
Okay.
It's a health issue. So age issue too. And in that case, probably the Vice President Kamala Harris would be the very important position. And we never know her ability too. But I think Team Biden's characteristic is clear. That's as I already told you that the continuing engagement in the world and maintaining status quo over international stability. So and maintain the U.S. as the supremacy
and the global power.
Global power.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why the policy toward China is very tough, especially they believe the past U.S. engagement policy toward China failed, and they clearly changed the U.S. course toward more competition with China. But at the same time, they don't want to fight against China. That's going to be disaster. So, and they still continue to engage in the Chinese economy. I think that they continue because that's impossible to decouple Chinese economy.
Of course, it's a huge trade partner for the U.S. Yes. Right.
So U.S. policy toward China is a very continuing engagement with de-risking. De-risking part is high tech technology, especially the semiconductors, high spec one. The technology is I think not going to China easily, and trying to stop China may have a big technological advantage, which could convince leader Xi Jinping to go some wild military adventurism. That's clear, and I'm sure that's shared with Trump administration and other Republican administration too. So in that sense, relatively easier for us. Us means U.S. allied partner, European or Indo-Pacific. That's continuous.
So, as I understand it correctly, there are a lot of question marks when it comes. They depend on the outcome of the elections, and I think there are some really interesting and challenging times ahead of us. And I think with this we can finish this interview today. I would like to thank you, Mr. Watanabe, for coming us here today and for joining me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.